The new Toyota Camry just came out, and as soon as I walked by one for the first time, I thought, wait, is that just a rebadged Lexus? Well, in today's video, we're gonna dig into the new Camry and actually have it side by side with the current ES hybrid to answer that very question. Is this just an ES300H with a Camry badge on it? I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines, and a big shout out to Performance Toyota and Daniel in particular, the Fashion King, for getting this Camry ready for us to film today. Okay, so just a little bit of a background with my relationship and the Toyota Camry. Not many people know this, but I went to school to be a mechanic. I didn't end up being one, obviously. And when I was in school, a lot of my classmates all drove Camrys. And because of that, there was always this like camaraderie about how sick Camrys are. Because for the money, I've always found them to be a very smooth, reliable, and in most countries of the world, actually considered a luxury car. So having it side by side with the ES today is gonna be a really good comparison. Now with this new Camry design, the first thing that I've noticed as I walk by these things, being that we're beside a Toyota dealership every day, is the front end. And I was joking with a few friends about when the new Prius came out and now with the new Camry, and I was like, yo, Toyota's been working out. It's like, who hurt you, Toyota? You've been at the gym and you look better than ever now. You've been tanning and you've been hitting the weights and you look amazing. And that's what this front end tells me. And it's pretty simple to think. So now we have an accentuated, very wide and low slung front grille. We have the bottom section here that reminds me of the Lexus F Sport grille, but we've seen that in a couple Camrys already. What's changed to me is this center bit here, and it's got some venting and some sensors and stuff like that. And then that new headlight design, which some people say looks a little buggy, but I love it. Now this one is the SE package, so it doesn't have the wraparound daytime running lights, but when you see one of them with it, it sort of gives a really exotic looking front end that, whether you like it or not, it will catch your attention. That's for sure. So from that, we also have a little bit of side venting here. This is all pretty cheap feeling plastic. It's like the textured plastic, but because of that, since it's not painted, it makes for very durable. And this one being the SE, we also have a little bit of a lip kit here. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's pretty sick. Like this lip here and how it has like that V angle reminds me of like the Artisan Spirits kit for Lexus or the Tom's Racing kit, like almost like an aftermarket lip kit, and it draws my attention to it as well. If we compare it to the ES, we have some similar lines. Now, this ES hybrid isn't the sport. This one's like the mid-level, it's the luxury. And we have a little bit more chrome here, a little bit more of that exaggerated grille. However, as you get to the sides, you see a little bit more of those wide angles. And with this one, standard, we're gonna have more of that daytime running light, that frosted daytime running light, which if you can imagine on the Camry, those higher packages have that sort of around that headlight and the triple beam headlight as well on the ES. Now, I was peeking under the hood of the Camry earlier because that was a difference that I noticed, is this new Camry has the updated and latest and greatest powertrain that maybe we'll see when the ES gets redesigned. Maybe that's like a little foreshadowing, is that the ES is gonna be redesigned relatively soon as well. And what I noticed, and I was telling the guys, it's not that I don't work out, because I'm not ripped by any means, but this is the heaviest hood I've ever felt in my entire life. And I get that with Lexus, I'm used to having a little bit of a strut on the hood instead of the prop rod, but I mean it. I don't know if that's part of the structure or the crash test rating, or just a way to insulate and help with some sound deadening for the 4-cylinder hybrid system we have under here. But I will challenge you to lift up one of these hoods. It's super solid and super heavy, and I'm sure that helps with safety. Under here, yes, the new Camry only comes in a 4-cylinder hybrid, but it does come in two trims, or two powertrains, I guess you could say. You have that on-demand all-wheel drive system, or the SE front-wheel drive system that we see here. And when you go to the on-demand, you'll get some extra electric motors and a little bit extra power as well. Now, speaking of that hood, as I'm closing it, I do see some nice body lines, one that fades away and one that sort of stays truant all the way through the edge. Pretty similar to the ES, except for on the ES, it has more of a round at the front. So it sort of wraps around and then stays truant. So pretty similar body lines, but the Camry so far is coming in a little bit heftier with that hood, as well as a little bit, it seems lower slung and a little bit lower slung and a little bit more sporty, I would say. Okay, so let's look at the side profile, which makes me think this is the exact same car. Just kidding, but it's similar. The wheel size, so we have an 18-inch wheel Hankook on the Camry and an 18-inch wheel Michelin on the ES. They're both the exact same size, which is a 235/45/18, and they both have just a regular brake setup below it. I did notice the Lexus bumper sort of goes higher up that fender to make it so it's almost like a two-piece side, where this one stays low and towards the front. And even the fender itself has a little bit more tin sound to it on the Camry. And oh, you know what I noticed? The mirrors. So the top of the mirrors has these little vortex generators. On the Camry, we have the little vortex generator on this little triangle piece. And again, it's almost like that textured plastic. On the Lexus, it's a lot smaller and painted, and we have some chrome injected to a little bit sleeker of a mirror. Now, this is the real test. The sound of closing the door. So we're gonna start with the Camry. Okay, now to the Lexus. Definitely there's a difference. It's not huge. Hang on, it's yelling at me. It's not huge, but as expected, the Lexus does have a little bit more weight to it, it feels. And because of that, a little bit less of the tinny sound, but it's not a lot on the Camry. It's still not bad. And actually the rear door, there's almost none. Yeah, it's really similar. However, the Camry does have a little bit more of that tinny noise. I'm sure it's just a little bit of weight savings. And sometimes I find with Lexus and Toyota, it's like they'll build the Lexus, and then with the Toyota, they're like, oh, let's just make it so it's a little bit less luxurious so that people still buy the Lexus, because they're still the same parent company. Height-wise, I would say both are very similar. The Camry might seem lower, but I think it's just in my head. If so, we're talking fractions here. It's not a big deal, and it could be because it's the Sport. I'm not 100% sure. So body lines of the Camry did make me think. Now, I saw this all over the internet that people were criticizing the new Camry for just being like a reskinned old Camry, because the way that platforms work now is different than it used to work years ago. Technically, this is on the same platform, but the word platform now means sort of like the puzzle pieces that go together, or like that foundation of the car itself. And I would say looking at it, I didn't think so, except for when I look down the side, the body lines of this Camry look very familiar, like the old one. However, we do have a little bit of a lip kit on the bottom because of that SE. And it looks like that body line goes right down the middle of the door handles, which look unchanged from previous models. On the Lexus, we have a little bit higher of a body line, and it's a little bit more of an edge to it. I did hear recently from a guest of mine how important that part of the integral structure is when you have that fold like that in the aluminum, and what that does for it. Then the door handles, again, just the standard Lexus door handles. They're not the E-latch yet. I'm sure when they redesign the ES coming soon, we'll probably see a little upgrade to that electronic door latch that I love so much. And now let's look at some rear ends. So on the back of the Camry SE, we have the SE badge as well as the HEV badge, which I'm seeing pop up a little bit more. Yo, we got a blacked out Camry logo, which reminds me of the LEXUS logo that we're seeing pop up. And by the way, even on some Lexuses, I've seen us be able to black these out. But this looks like it comes from the factory that way, and I think that's super sleek and classy. Now, if you know me, you know I love a good taillight, so let's check out the taillights on the new Camry. And again, it's an SE, so I'm not expecting the world here, but they're super smooth. So a little bit of just diffusion here, classic Toyota looking taillight, nothing to write home about. I think in the higher packages, it's more sharp and more diffused and a little bit more Lexus-like. And of course, one of the benefits of the Camry is gonna be that trunk space. So, looks super wide. You can definitely fit a couple golf clubs. The trick is to see how many Dustins can you fit in here, and it looks like at least one, maybe 1.5. There's lots of space. Not too many features, although I did notice those back seats do fold down, and that is a benefit because not every car does that. and we have a little lever there to do so. I'm gonna check to see, and yes, it does. It has a spare tire. Ladies and gentlemen, it has a spare tire. I know people in the comments are always making sure I talk about spare tires, and this Camry has one. Okay, so back to the ES. So we have a little bit of chrome at the top there, the classic Lexus logo, the ES300H down in the bottom right, and then not really any diffusion going on here. It's just a solid painted piece at the bottom, and the exhaust pipe is tucked nicely up because that body language of, or that new design language of having no exhaust back there. But otherwise, nothing crazy to write home about. I will show you them taillights though, because they are super sharp. So now we have more of a diffused LED setup with some layers to it. And again, in traffic, it just catches your eye and states that this is a luxury vehicle that is driving in front of you. We also have a little spoiler here, and that was interesting because for ESs for a while, only the hybrids had spoilers. Maybe it's for fuel economy, I don't know. In terms of the trunk space, so for one, it opens very smoothly. Even though it's not powered, it's almost like spring-loaded, it just opens up differently than a regular trunk, and I like that someone at Lexus Engineering thought of that. And also even the way that the struts or the mechanism is covered. These are all those little things that make it a Lexus. We have ample room in here. Definitely you could fit one Dustin and a half, but you'll notice the rear seats don't fold down. There's just a pass-through. And I get asked this all the time. Dustin, why does Lexus in some of their models not have fold-down seats? I want the fold-down seats. Well, it's simple. A lot of road noise and a lot of extra air and anything going on can be sealed off when the air pressure from the trunk is sealed off. And because of that, to have that pass-through instead of actual fold-down seats means a smoother and quieter ride, especially for those rear passengers. And I had a guest, Adam, the other day tell me, you should buy a car for 80% of your lifestyle instead of the 20%. So even if you're only gonna use that extra space 20% of the time, still go with that quiet ride because you're gonna use that 80% of the time. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so getting into the Camry, and this is like my second time sitting in this vehicle, so it's gonna be a lot new to me. I did notice, even just shutting that door, there's definitely like a little bit extra vibration there, but that's okay. Interior-wise, I like the layers. I like the simplicity of the layers. I will notice it's really cool, this trim that we see. So even in the base model, I like that there's some leather, there's some fabric, and sort of trimmed on the dash and on the doors. It's almost like an injected molded plastic, but covered in like a textile material with stitching going across. So I think it's very pretty to look at. It's kind of soft and high-end to touch. It's a new take. And actually, I sort of see some of that in the seats as well. So I find that really cool. Everything else is very simple. We have a couple cup holders here with some extra storage in front of it. I love when brands do that. We have a seamless wireless charger, which is cool because, I don't know, like it just seems like a little shelf, which I like. Decent size armrest. It is padded. It's not super padded. Again, it's a little plasticky. I can feel it moving around a little bit, but it's fine. It's a Camry. We have a couple different drive modes down here. So Eco, Normal, and Sport. Ergonomically, I think they're in a great spot. One of the best spots, actually, because if my arm is here, I can just go boom, boom, boom. First finger is Eco, second is Normal, third is Sport. That's super easy. And then we have EV mode. Now, if you don't know what EV mode is, on a hybrid, I usually let the car do the thinking itself. However, there's some situations that you want to override it and just be like, yo, put that in EV. Maybe pulling it in and out of a showroom like I did today. Maybe pulling it out of your driveway. Most of the time you can just let it do its thing though. And then it'll have that gas engine on when you need to, have the hybrid working with it, but you can override that. Then we have the brake hold switch or button, which is another feature that I always forget to go over. It's really cool because if you're in the drive-thru and you want to give that brake leg a little bit of a break, no pun intended, you can press that hold button, let go of that brake, and then when you're ready to move again, you can sort of just hit the gas and it'll turn it off. And then we have the electronic parking brake below that. The shifter itself, I'm just gonna turn it on. Really nice, super ergonomic. It's a true shift. I don't know how else to explain that. So a true like clicking into gear shift with a sport mode to the left. I see some USB-C chargers at the front of that little shelf as well as a USB-A. So that might be for data, I'm not sure. And then above that, we have these little vents, which have some texture to it. I quite like that. The four-way switch is within reach of that shifter, which I always like to see. And then the automatic climate control with things like the heated steering, the heated seats, all that, sort of integrated into its own panel, which I really like. I think that's smart. And you can change the levels of those types of features. I always just leave that type of system at 21 degrees Celsius, let it do its thing. In terms of the multimedia, this looks very familiar. Now, this being the SE, it's definitely a smaller screen than any of the other ones that you can see out there. And this looks exactly like the Lexus system that I'm used to, except for the beep. That, my friends, is a beep with a capital P at the end. But you can turn that off, I'm sure. In there, we have things like some climate adjustments. And you know what? Even though the screen itself looks very familiar, the actual animations look a little different. Not better, not worse, just different, I would say. So on that, you have that new Toyota multimedia thing. On the screen in the center, I'm just gonna adjust the steering wheel manually here, is pretty nice. Like, I would say very nice colors. We default to that beautiful animation of the hybrid and electric motors doing their thing and where the power is coming from. You can customize a lot of the layout of this, and I find there's actually a decent amount of layers to it. All the latest Toyota safety stuff, everything from pre-collision system to also driver exit assist, where like if you're about to leave the car and there's like a cyclist coming down the road, it'll help you. With that, we also have road sign assist, all the latest and greatest. And I love that Toyota and Lexus always do that, where you don't have to pay extra for safety features because they're safety features. So I always recommend that when you're shopping for a car, if you're comparing this to maybe one of the other volume brands, and this is coming out a little bit more money, well, check to see if you have to pay extra for safety features with those other brands. I bet you do. And that helps with things like insurance costs and stuff like that. So yeah, a bunch of different layers here, everything from EV driving ratio to driving score to all those fuel economy type things, which hybrid owners always find so fun to watch and to make sure. I love the eco score. It'll give you that when you finish your trip, and it'll give you a score on how did you do. Start and stop, cruise, braking, all that stuff. And it just kind of makes it a game to save fuel. And they've been doing that since like the Prius back in the day, back when I was at Toyota in like 2015. So that looks really great. I'm super happy with that. We also have, oh, that's really good. Oh my goodness. I found something in here that I wish Lexus had, and that's rare. The volume knob on the steering wheel, although it's a little loose, it's good. And what I mean by that is it's like an up and down switch. Very ergonomic, it's in a great spot. Great job, Toyota. You showed us what's up, and I hope that that happens in the ES in the future. We also on the right side just have some driving stuff like radar cruise, etc., etc. On the left, I have a few buttons over here, nothing crazy, things like auto high beam, etc. A single panel sunroof with a black or like charcoal textile roof. Nothing too fancy here. It is an LED vanity light and some cool LEDs sort of in that dome light section. But that's enough about the front. I will say the seats are very comfortable. It's definitely a synthetic leather. It's the Softex leather, but there's nothing wrong with that. They'll hold up and they'll last a very long time. And overall, very comfortable, and their power. And the lumbar is really good too. But let's take a look at that rear seat and see how that compares. Okay, getting in the back seat. First of all, shutting the door on the back, more solid than the front. Hands down, way more solid. There's less materials and like less mechanisms in the rear door, and I think that's why I don't hear that extra shake. Also, I find ergonomically, it feels really tall back here. I feel like I have tons of headroom. I feel like I'm very upright. I feel like the seat in front of me is actually really tall, so I don't know if the rear is lower. Like, I don't know if I'm actually technically sitting lower than the front, but it feels comfortable and very safe, and I like that. I did find a very interesting design that reminds me of the ES, and that's right here. It's like in the Katana, which is like a very interesting design language on the ES, on the dashboard where there's like this panel that looks like a katana. That's exactly what this is here. It's almost like they took that from the ES and put it here, except they made it plastic, where on the ES it's actually metal. So that's something that I noticed. Let's look at this armrest. Again, I wouldn't really expect less. It sort of droops down, but it does the trick. No one's gonna complain about it. It's leather, it's comfortable. The seats themselves are very comfortable. Amenities, we don't have a ton in this package, just a little map holder, We have some vents in the center, some charging ports, nothing crazy, but a really comfortable car for the price. Okay, so now we're sitting back in the lap of luxury with the Lexus ES, and I'm not gonna go over the extra features you get in this because this is a higher package, it is a more expensive model. Those things are going to be expected. It's more about the layout. So already very different center console, although the shifter is in that still step design, very similar to what I saw in the Camry, just a little bit more leather, a little bit more size to it. The actual layout is very different. We have that wireless charger closer to the back, a couple cup holders in the front, and the console, I hope I'm saying that right, the console itself seems bigger. The armrest that opens, you know, both sides, a little bit extra leather, and the materials themselves are just higher quality, including how that door shuts, right? A little bit more solid, with some wood grain, some aluminum. Things you touch are higher end, including even things you don't touch normally, like this little panel here. So that is sort of where Lexus and Toyota are going to differentiate, is the materials used on the interior. Although, as I pointed out, even the screen, once it's fired up, is a really similar layout. It actually looks like the same multimedia display, although someone just drag and dropped it and put it in a Lexus versus a Toyota. We have a little bit more buttons for things like heated and cooled seats, all separate down at like this lower panel, where in the Toyota it was more integrated up. So we see a little bit of differentiation there. Seat-wise, I mean, the ES has always been known for very comfortable seats with lots of controls. This one has genuine leather, where some of them are still going to be Nulux, which is very similar to Softex. They both are the synthetic leather that Toyota and Lexus offers. I am impressed, and I'm always impressed with the new ES and how modern it feels, because it's got wood grain, but it's like a modern take on wood grain, and it gives you a little bit of that timeless. And speaking of timeless, we still got a clock in here, like an analog Lexus clock, which I think is just so classy. Back seat of that Lexus, oof. Sorry, that sounds great. I gotta do it again. Oh, amazing. That sounds so good getting into the back of the ES. We also have, already as I'm getting in, stuff like the door handle is metal. It's a metal door handle. We have wood grain on the doors. We have layered leather, less of that cheap feeling plastic and more luxury feeling things. So it's one of those things that if you didn't have a Lexus before, you wouldn't notice a difference. But once you have it, it's hard to let go of those higher end materials. Amenities wise, I mean, it's the same package. We have some maps, we have some wireless, or not wireless charger, we have some USB-Cs, we have headspace, and even the armrest here flops down, but it's just taller. There's less of a gap, there's more to it, there's cup holders built into it, it's a bit more comfortable, even the seats are more comfortable. The attention to detail with like the leather and the stitching and the perforated leather, all of those things are expected. In terms of space and size, I mean, they both have tons of that. The Camry might even have a few extra inches, I'm not sure. It's all pretty similar though. So to answer the question, is the new Camry just a rebadge Lexus? And the answer is no. However, coming soon, we are going to see a new fully redesigned ES that we're imagining is going to be offered only in hybrid and maybe even plug-in hybrid, similar to what we saw happen with the Camry. And we also think there's going to be some upgrades to the powertrain, maybe even an updated hybrid powertrain, like how this Camry here has 225 horsepower and this one only has 215. And I think when that happens, Lexus is going to do a really good job of differentiating itself from Toyota, as they've done in the past with driving dynamics and maybe even a higher horsepower powertrain, which I of course know nothing about, wink wink, nudge nudge. And on the Camry, we did see some really cool engineering feats. One is, and this could be wrong, but it's what I read online, and everything on the internet is of course true, this was fully designed by an engineer here in North America. I think the USA to be exact, where usually the Camry is actually has a head engineer in Japan or somewhere else, and then they sort of like fine tune it. So this car was designed and tuned from the ground up for roads in North America and that driving dynamic. And because of that, we see a very smooth ride and even smoother and better suspension than previous generations. We have some latest tech, some amazing styling. Even the Toyota badge just looks better. It's more like a brushed aluminum that really sticks out instead of, you know, a chrome that might actually fade and stuff like that. I think Toyota did an absolute amazing job. I can't wait to check out a totally fully loaded one. However, it's definitely not a Lexus, but still a lot of great value for the money. So big shout out to Performance Toyota for letting me film this beautiful car. Make sure you check out their YouTube channel, which is linked below, Performance Toyota. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you let me know in the comments what you thought of this video and which one you would choose, the ES or the Camry, and I'll see you in the next video.